The latest Champions Chess Tour event organised by the Play Magnus Group got off to a cracking start today. This is the Goldmoney Asian Rapid, and there are lots of Asian players in the tournament, lots of Indian players. For example, we have Adiban and Vidit. We have two young players. We have Gukesh and Aragasi. From China, we have Ho Yifan and Ding Liren. We have Salem Saleh from United Arab Emirates. So there's more of a mix of players, and that's much more interesting. And of course, at the top, we have some of the superstars. We have Magnus Carlsen, we have Wesley So, we have Anish Giri, and we have Alireza Firouzja as well. I'm going to show you round one game between Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen. This was fascinating. Firouzja with the white pieces. He plays a Vienna. That's a slice serve if ever I saw one. And bishop c4. We've seen g3 played already in some of these online events. Bishop c4 is real 19th century stuff. I think bishop b4 is the most reliable move here for black. But you can, let's just get that on the board. But this is also possible, leads to crazy complications after queen h5, bishop d, b3, and so on. Anyway, Carlsen goes for bishop c5. Interesting. Basically, we transpose into a king's gambit declined. And I think this is quite a comfortable position for white. A lot of tricks here. Carlsen, after a little bit of thought, decided to play a6 just to preserve his bishop here. So knight a4, the bishop can just drop back. But knight g4 is the kind of move you often see in club games. Not very good. You can just play queen e2. That's fine for white. Knight g5 is also fun with this idea. F5 and then queen h5. That's just one of those little tricks, which is absolutely devastating. Anyway, let's come back to this position. a6 played. And here, well, I think Firouzja played quite conservatively with bishop b3. You can go for f5 with this lovely clamp, just cutting that bishop out of the game. Steinitz played that move. You could also go for a3, just making sure that bishop drops back here. If it's hit, that's sensible too. That was played by Blackburn, among others. Bishop b3 is okay. But yeah, I think there was the more aggressive moves. h6. Queen e2. Once again, f5 could have been played, but queen e2. Firouzja is looking to castle on the queen side. Bishop g4. And pawn takes, bishop e3. So things are calming down now. Once the knight gets into d4, I don't think Carlsen has too many difficulties here. And the position basically stabilizes after knight h5. So you can see these two knights getting in on the outposts, but white is also okay here. King b1, and now having got that king away from that check, then maybe this is possible to take here. But anyway, Carlsen decides just to exchange everything here. And the position at this moment was looking pretty dull. I was commentating live on this game on Chess24. And around about here, well, basically, I started to dismiss this one. I thought it was going to just end up in a draw pretty quickly. Both sides have very sensible positions. Nothing too much going on. For example, here, white could exchange and play the knight to d5. looks very normal. Just to put the knight on the outpost, it covers the f4 square. But I mean, I don't think white has the advantage because I think this knight is very well placed. You know, maybe rook f8 could come with the idea f5. It's roughly level. But Firouzja started playing some moves that looked a bit funny. First of all, he moved the knight back. Carlsen played rook f8. Good move. He's looking to break with f5. And here, I thought rook d1 was kind of solid enough. But Firouzja played d5. I thought this was really risky. Because after knight g5, black is able to set up an attack on the king's side. So knight f2 threatened. And now rook c1. This gives us a clue as to Firouzja's intention, which is to ram this pawn up the board. Still, I thought this was incredibly risky from white's viewpoint, because Carlsen has tremendous play on the king's side. Takes, and now the rook came in. And here, well, if white wants to just kind of dial it down a bit, then this is probably okay. Leads to this position, and I suspect that white is all right here. I mean, you know, rook and pawn endgames, generally, even if you go a pawn down, things can liquidate, you can often make a draw. But Firouzja played knight c3 after almost 2 minutes thought, and this is really going for it. So he's giving up that h-pawn, and he just pushes through on the queen side. This is incredibly brave. It feels as though, well, Carlsen is a pawn up, but this queenside play doesn't look like anything special. I mean, I thought at the time that taking is a safe option for black, and then to play like this and play g5, because it's hard for white to make any more progress on the queen side. This d-pawn isn't really going anywhere. The rook does a good enough job. I mean, it's a bit more complicated than that after rook c3, but still, this should be absolutely fine for black here. Let's go back. King b8 played by Carlsen, which is also fine, it turns out. But now it starts getting tricky. So Alireza's got this pawn where it wants to be, and knight a4 starts to get a bit tricky. But here, again, king a7, I think that basically kills white's play on the queen side. I think that should be fine for black. But Carlsen plays rook e2, knight b6, rook c7. I mean, maybe he just assumed everything was fine here. But watch what happens. Check. Rook c4 defends the pawn. h5. So Carlsen just calmly advancing this h-pawn. Rook g1 from Firouzja. Now, this is actually a critical moment. Impossible to tell. The computer says that h4 is a winning move. But in a rapid play game, when you haven't got very much time, this is impossible to calculate, because it feels as though white is doing enough here. But actually, some tricky moves will get you there. I mean, if you can follow this, well done. Basically, this should be winning for black. But like I said, that sequence of moves is incredibly difficult to find. Carlsen played a very natural move, g6, which looks like it just holds everything. Certainly prevents the rook taking and getting behind that pawn here. So this feels completely normal. After this, incredibly, things are not so clear. It seems that Carlsen, according to the computer, Carlsen should play here and it's still okay for him. But instead he played h4, which looks like the most natural move on the board. Pass pawn should be pushed, someone said. But watch what happens on the other side of the board. This is incredible. It's like this slow motion attack. But very, very hard to meet. So idea, clearly, ram the b pawn through to b6. So b6 from Carlsen, b5 anyway, and here's the idea. White threatens to push that pawn to a5, and something is going through. So Carlsen has to do something. If he exchanges, then that is mate on a4. Utter disaster. So he closed the position. Now, that's obviously make or break. Firouzja has this wonderful protected pass pawn on c6, but Carlsen has pawns over here. So at first glance, it looks like black is still in control, but this move, that is the problem for Carlsen. So if pawn takes, knight d6, and those pawns are going to steam through. Well, at least they claim a rook, and that is winning for white with the idea of a check on d7. So knight e5 was a shocker. When you thought, well, Carlsen's got it covered on the queen side, bam, in the middle. So Carlsen ploughed on with h3, but now, because the knight has reconnected, actually those pawns are not so dangerous. If g5, then knight g4, and, well, e5 is coming soon. White should be winning this. And of course, pawn takes knight, d6, still good for white. So Carlsen played knight takes. He's hoping to kind of limp on in this position. Even that is dodgy for black. But far better was knight takes pawn. Knight e3. Rook c3 played. And here is the clincher. Knight f4. Spinning round to the dream square on d5. Here's how the game ended. Knight d5. That even stops a check on b4. And now it is lost. Basically, this pawn is dropping. And then white turns to the queen side. So this is how the game ended. Knight f2. Well, rook h2 simply is winning here. But Firouzja had seen knight takes rook. And then rook takes h3, which is even better. So here's the deal. That knight is attacked. If it moves, then rook h8. And rook a8 is unstoppable. Mate. And there's nothing that black can do. I mean, you can give a few checks, but the king just marches up the board, and there's still no defense to this, basically. Or you can play rook e7. The knight pops out. Two pieces under attack. A check. Rook here, and now rook check. And knight b6. And black's position caves in. Wow, what a start. That was round one. And there were so many exciting games. I think what's great is that there are a lot of players who've been invited who haven't played in these online tournaments before, or not the Champions Chess Tour before. And, you know, they're eager to make their name. I'll tell you what, there weren't many short draws today. It was fantastic to see. Firouzja actually had a bit of a nightmare after this. He didn't win any more games. Carlsen managed to claw his way back and scored 3.5 out of 4 after this first loss. So it didn't tell us much at all. And there are 5 players leading with 3.5 out of 5. but plenty of excitement, lots of wins, lots of decisive games. So if you want to join us for the commentary on Chess 24, I'm commentating with Tanya Sachdev, and it is fantastic fun. Thanks for watching.